What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Shontavia Show, where my goal is to help you start a business based on your life's vision. This ain't gonna be your daddy's business advice. I'm laser focused on entrepreneurship in the 21st century, vision, and breaking the traditional mold. If you can get with that, you can get with me. Be sure to visit shontavia.com for more episodes, blog posts, and other content. Thank you for listening. The show starts now. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Shontavia Show, where I want to inspire you to make more income and impact with your big ideas. And I am really thrilled to have with me today Ann Griffin. Ann, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Shontavia. I'm thrilled to be here today, especially as an alumna of the Brand and Business Academy.
Bloop, bloop. Awesome. We're going to get into that too. But before we do that, let me introduce you to everybody. Ann is a human and product manager in that order. She's also a product coach and a career pivot coach. She's built her product management career working at all kinds of organizations that you've heard of, like Microsoft, Comcast, and Mercedes-Benz. And she's currently working as a product manager at a Fortune 500 company, and also as the Chief Product and Curriculum Officer at Tech 2025. And outside of her 9 to 5, Ann is a side hustler. She's got a couple of different things she's doing, including through Griffin Product and Growth. She's the Chief Product Coach there, and then also through Pivot, Grow, Hustle. And we're going to get into all of that. Ann, how are you doing in like this last month of 2020?
I'm actually doing great. And a lot of that is because I learned some work-life balance lessons the hard way earlier in the pandemic. So I am being a lot more intentional about how I balance just my life and all the side hustles going on.
Smart. So smart. You know, I believe in that, in blocking out all the noise, putting on those blinders. And it looks like you have figured out, like you said, how to do that really well. And I'm wondering about your background. So you're in tech, you've worked with all these big companies. Where did you grow up? What is your story? How did we get here?
Yeah, so I'm from a place where most people never suspect that I'm from. I'm from Minnesota originally. Both of my parents are actually in STEM. My mom is a retired floor chemist, and so basically organic chemist. My dad is a retired electrical engineer. He actually just retired on Monday, 41 years at his job. Yeah, so we're excited for him. And so they always encouraged me to be in STEM, and I always really loved technology, even though when I was growing up, it was like, DOS programs with like little black and white, things on the computer screen with the computers you had to turn on from the switch in the back. But all of that stuff used to really interest me. And I went to college for engineering, not being 100% of what direction I wanted to go in. But I remember the year I went to college was the year the iPod came out. And I remember thinking it would be so cool to be the person who gets to decide how that works and what features are there. And everyone, loves it when it comes out. And I didn't know what product management was back then, but that's what I do now. Like that exact thought of this is what would be so cool to do and build these type of things is what I get to do now, which, I'm really happy. And being in technology really helped me be able to go down this path because I had the technical background. I knew how to talk to the technical people, but I took a lot of different types of courses, even while I was in engineering. So I learned a lot about the non-technical aspects of tech as well.
No, that's cool. I mean, I feel like, so I got an engineering degree too. And I did not get exposed to like all the things you can do with a tech background, right? Like you can
Yeah.
be an engineer or you can be a product manager, you can be an intellectual property lawyer, you can do all these different things. So how did you get to the point where you went from like your engineering degree to product management? What was the like door that opened that showed you could do that with your degree?
Yeah. So when I was in college, I had like a loose association with our campus recruiter for Microsoft. And there was one day where I was talking to that recruiter about something completely unrelated. And I guess the way I was explaining it made them think, I should ask her about an internship because she asked me, would you be interested in an internship at Microsoft? And I was like, yeah. I didn't actually study computer engineering. I studied industrial and operations engineering. I still had to learn to code and everything, but not necessarily the typical type of engineering major Microsoft hires. But they hired me as an intern into this role called program manager. And I didn't know, I still hadn't heard the term product manager. And if you're in the tech world, you'll know Microsoft program managers actually are product managers. And in that internship, I was like, this is awesome. I was having a great time. I got to design things that would, help with the future of analytics of some of the products. I got to help with things that were going to impact future APIs. And I knew then that that's what I wanted to do for my career. But it still took me a couple years outside of college to learn about product management in terms of how other parts of the industry call it and what that looks like and how to kind of get back on track. Because when I graduated, I also graduated during the Great Recession. The job I actually got was in IT consulting because that's what was hiring. So I eventually found my way into proper product management, and that's kind of how my story into product started.
Huh. That's cool. So, like, when I graduated from law school or when I graduated from undergrad, I didn't know anything about intellectual property. I didn't know what patents were. I didn't know what a plaintiff was or anything. But it was somebody similar who said, "Hey, have you ever thought about this?" That opened that door. And I feel like entrepreneurship is similar, where,
Yes.
like you're solving problems or somebody says, "Hey, Ann, you're really good at that. Can you help me with it?" And then it turns into like a full-fledged business. And so I'm wondering how you went from like your day-to-day work to deciding you're going to start a side hustle or start another business.
To be honest, one of the biggest reasons was COVID-19. I remember,
Also, this is brand new. This is new.
so
Okay,
I
okay.
had a business that was more for my public speaking and that sort of thing, but it wasn't like that was raking in massive dollars, and I actually started my LLC because of you, because I was like, okay, if I'm going to start collecting checks for this, I should at least have an LLC. But Pivot Girl Hustle and the business in terms of having my course Attract Your Dream Job, that started because of the pandemic. And for years, I've actually been helping people with their careers for free. People have asked me for advice. I've helped people get jobs. And the pandemic made me really think, oh, wow. So what if, 6 months from now, the whole of corporate America, the whole of tech looks completely different? And let's say, it's really super competitive to find a new job. If for some reason I were to lose my job, knock on wood, that doesn't happen. But fortunately, I've been fine so far through the pandemic. And I also honestly was inspired by a lot by your podcast and things that you talk about around intellectual property. And I had done talks with O'Reilly, and they're great. And I had done other talks through other people, but I realized all the courses I have been teaching, other things, you know, I didn't own the things that I was doing in my digital footprint. And I realized, okay, so I'm giving everybody else a cut of me because I don't want to do the work to start my business. And I could have been further along by now, even if I had started small and just been like, I'm not putting big expectations on myself. I'm just going to start, where I am now. And I could have been further along before the pandemic hit had I just started somewhere. And so when the pandemic hit, I was like, no more. I need my own intellectual property that I own, that the only cuts I'm giving out are like when I pay for, ConvertKit, or I'm paying for these tools to run my own business, but the intellectual property itself is mine.
Oh, that's so smart. That is so, so smart. I love that. I don't know why I thought your business had been around for a while, but I mean, it sounds like your first business was your speaking and
Yes.
consulting and all of that. So Pivot Girl Hustle is the second business that you started
Yes.
this year.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. So the pandemic hits and you see all of this around, and how did you decide that this was it? So you have like product management in your background, you have engineering in your background. Why did you decide that this type of company was it? And what does Pivot Grow Hustle do?
Yes. So Pivot Girl Hustle is really about helping people pivot in their careers. And one of the things that I get asked a lot about from professionals, especially people in tech or interested in going into tech, is how do I find my next job? Like, how do I get past the interview stage? How do you, get all these companies interested in you? And the other thing I realized is that I have a unique skill in that I have a lot of companies coming to me without ever applying, even when I'm not looking for a job. During this pandemic alone, Amazon has reached out to me 3 times. Facebook has reached out a couple times. Twitter's reached out. Zillow's reached out. Lyft reached out. Those are just the names that people know. That doesn't include the people that, people aren't familiar with those brands. And I thought to myself, this makes sense because this is an area where I already have a lot of people that are seeking out my advice for this knowledge. And it's something that, frankly, I know I'm very good at. And so I was like, let's start here. I could maybe start with, some of them, I can start expanding other parts of my business with the product management consulting and that sort of thing as well later on. But I was like, this is a lot easier because everyone needs a job and people know me for, how I've actually been building my career in product management and tech and that sort of thing. And that is why they specifically come to me. So that's why I started this business and why I was interested in saying, I'm going to help people pivot in their careers, especially in that job search part.
Cool. So you started the business based on your expertise, based on where people were already coming to you. You put a price tag on it and started selling to people who were already inquiring about what you were doing.
Yes.
Is that so? That's cool. So that's really interesting. So you start a business in the pandemic, teaching people how to get jobs. And I imagine, so like, how hard is it right now to get a job in tech? Is it easy? Is it hard? I mean, it sounds like it's been incredibly easy for you to have all these people reaching out to you, but what is it that you're doing that's different? And how are you teaching people that in Pivot, Grow, Hustle?
Yeah. So it varies from person to person. And some of this will depend on also how much experience you have, but also a lot of this is going to depend on, what you're doing to market yourself, and are you using all the tools at your disposal to get noticed, right? And that's one of the biggest things where for me, like I said, I'm not actually applying for jobs right now, but I have a lot of companies reaching out to me. And I'll talk to people who are interested in working with me and I'll say, okay, so, how are you using LinkedIn right now? And the number one answer I hear is, I don't really use it. Like I'm not really sure what to update on it. I never post, and it's kind of like defunct, right? It would be sort of like if your business website had information from 5 years ago, people were like, are you still in business? What's going on? Like, people don't know all the things you've added since then. And that's basically what people are doing to their LinkedIn. And the other thing about this is people don't know how to translate their skills from their last job into the job that they want to go into, which is a definite job search, let's say, blocker for people who are trying to pivot into new roles, which a lot of people are. Like, not just new roles and this is a new job, but it's saying like, I was a data scientist and now I'm trying to be a front-end developer, let's say. And so I help people kind of identify like, what specifically are you doing wrong? Also helping people pick a direction, which I'm sure you run into that too, when people are trying to start their business and they're saying, well, I could do a lot of things. They're like, you have to niche down. Like, what do you want to do? Who do you want to do it for? Then niche down from there. And I have people that say, well, I'm kind of interested in product management, but I could do project management, but then I'm also kind of interested in doing, customers like service things. And I'm like, you're going to have to pick one and focus that on your job search, because when recruiters, check out your website, check out your LinkedIn, or you send them your resume, they're going to say, I don't understand why this person applied, or I don't understand why they're interested in this. Or even worse, they're not going to understand how any of your experience is relevant. And so that I really help people do that. And then also figure out, especially this is important for, Black people, people of color, and especially, the intersection of women and non-binary people, is really, how do you also find a company that fits your values? Because it says attract your dream job. Your dream job can easily turn into a nightmare if you don't vet them, right? There's a lot of things where people get into their dream job, in quotes, and then find out they have such a terrible culture. And like, you can't, necessarily 100% of the time predict that something is going to turn into a nightmare, but there are things that you can do in the process to properly interview that company back to decide, is this a fit for me other than the fact that they're providing a paycheck? And then we also talk about negotiation as well, because a lot of people I talk to have either never negotiated or their imposter syndrome is so big, it gets in the way of their negotiation. And that's the other piece we also talk about in the course is imposter syndrome, because I can't really help you with all the things I just mentioned if your imposter syndrome is telling you that you're not good enough to get a job as a developer, you're not good enough to try one more time for that PM interview, and you're not good enough, to get through these interviews. A lot of this is mindset. And so we talk about that so that people stop blocking their own blessings.
Oh man, I wish I would have had you when I was like 25. Because I said this on another episode of the show recently. When I was growing up, I knew people who had like quote good jobs, but I didn't know a lot of people who liked their jobs. I didn't know that there could actually be a dream job. I thought, you just go out and you get a job and that's what you do. You complain and you have fun on the weekends.
Yeah.
And so it's awesome that you figured out how to combine, like these cultural indoctrinations with
Yes.
how you actually go out and actually like find something you really love. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And it's a combination of learning the hard way, having a really great coach, and also having mentors. Because earlier in my career, I didn't have the mentors, I didn't have a coach. And so I learned the hard way, and I combined that with what I've learned along the way from like coaches and mentors.
No, that's great. That is really great. And so when you decided, okay, here's a thing, people are reaching out to me. I know there's something here. I can start a business. What were some of the first steps you took to actually start your business, get it off the ground, and like get going?
Yeah. So one of the first things I did was actually do a little bit of market research and understand what aspects of, helping people pivot in their careers, and also help people, because originally I was just like, I'm going to help people pivot in their careers, but that can mean a lot of things. And so actually there's a course I took, um, and it's not the one that you would think of. There's actually one by this person called Mo that taught me a little bit more about like how to research. And some of the things that she talked about was like, do research on book titles and other things that, on these topics, and see what keeps reoccurring and what do the people, in the comments section or the review section say about those things. And so that's where I first figured out, I'm like, okay, here's a great place for me to start and niche down on like what it means to help people pivot, and where people, there's the highest demand and what people need help with. And that's where I started. And then from there, kind of started being like, okay, there's a lot of things I don't know, which obviously led me eventually to Brand and Business Academy. And that was like really important for me, because I really needed to know more about like how this was going to work from intellectual property standpoint. Because I'm like, the whole point of having my own intellectual property is not just so I can have it, but also I need to protect it, right? And I'm not a lawyer. It's impossible to cobble this together from the internet, because the internet is not a lawyer. Some people might think it is, but it's not. And help guide me to the right resources, and also just help refine some of the things I had learned in the very initial stages of my business, that helped me actually have a business that I could think of as like, okay, I'm going to have ups and downs, but here are the things I need to just keep doing that'll help me be able to continue it and grow it.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up because one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you was I knew that your business was newer. I didn't realize how new. I'm excited now that it actually is like a 2020 baby
Yes.
because, so I think a lot of people, when they're working full time and they start a business, they just try to Google their way out of it and struggle through. So I love that you talked about like taking courses and finding mentors and experts. And you answered part of the question already, but I was just going to ask you, like, how did you decide at what point that like Google isn't enough, that you need an actual course, you need a coach, you need a guide, you need somebody who can help you?
I think I learned that even before I knew I was going to start Pivot Grow Hustle. And I'm actually, I mean, I just so everyone knows, like Shontavia did not have me say these things, but I'm going to reference a lot of things that Shontavia has said and posted because, I mean, she has inspired me for a lot of things, and also I've been following her for a while. So, like last fall, you made an Instagram post about file your LLC. If you are receiving payment or you're providing services for something, file your LLC. And I asked you a question about, like why this is important, if maybe like I'm not necessarily doing something consistently, like, I don't get paid every week for being a public speaker, right? And then I was like, well, why can't I necessarily do a DBA? And I was also like, I understand I'm not your client, so this is technically not legal advice. So, but you gave me an answer that helped me kind of better make a decision for myself. And that was something where before I saw that post, I was like, I don't really need an LLC. I'm fine. I'm just going to keep collecting checks whenever they come. But that really opened a door for me to see the tip of the iceberg of how much I didn't know. And so when I was like, I'm going to start a business in a pandemic, there's a lot of scammers out there. There's a lot of people who steal things. I mean, I was ready for like a worst case scenario come fall. So I was like, how do I make sure that I am protecting my business and my intellectual property, and, make sure that this is something where, again, like I can have this long term for myself. And like thinking back to like, wow, like that one little thing about, forming an LLC, I didn't know. And I'm like asking, which you weren't a complete stranger because I knew you through Tanya, but I was asking someone I've never met before in an Instagram comment for advice about an LLC, which, maybe the 21st century, that's not so crazy, but that also shouldn't, I was like, that shouldn't be where I'm getting all my advice. So I'm like, if she's giving me great advice and that served me, I'm like, and now she's offering an amazing course, I'm like, I should just pay her. And there are other people where obviously I've like paid for their courses and coaching, and just because I'm like, there are just so many missteps you can take that will be very expensive, which I have done some little things here and there that were expensive mistakes. There are a lot more expensive mistakes I can make if I don't talk to the right people and I don't pay for their expertise.
That is so, so smart. And not just because you're talking about me, but you are so, so right about that, though, especially about like getting bad advice online, especially from like Instagram or Clubhouse or Twitter or whatever.
Yes.
And I'm curious about, like, you talked about early mistakes you made. And I'm wondering if you could share, to the extent you're comfortable, like
Yes.
what are some of those early mistakes? Did you get bad advice from somebody online at any point? And I'm asking that because so many people who listen to this show are like where you were last year, I guess about a year ago, wanting to start something, Googling, figuring out a few things here and there, and trying to figure out like, should I spend money on this, or should I like just put my nose to the ground and like work on my business on my
Yeah.
own?
I think there's like two things that I would have done differently. One of them is much bigger than the other. The first thing, which is not as big, as I think giving myself more grace and time, where I put a lot of pressure on myself to get things off the ground like very quickly. And some of that was because of the pandemic and fear and not knowing what was going on, in this crazy year. But a lot of that was really self-imposed and it wasn't really necessary. And I think I could have done things, um, you know, in a way that was less stressful. The bigger thing is what we talked about this a little bit offline, or like Facebook and Instagram ads. There are a lot of things there that I learned, and some of it was not just like I was too early, but also like my type of product is not really suited for Facebook and Instagram ads. And part of that is because Facebook actually got sued maybe a year or two ago because they were actually allowing people to discriminate against women and people of color. And so now if anytime you're like, I actually want to filter into women of color or anything like that, they won't let you. So I couldn't actually reach who my perfect customer was, which is one of the things we talk about in Brand Business Academy. And so that was like one of the red flags. ignored because I was like, I'm going to get enough traffic. It'll be okay. And even though as a product manager, I understand the concept of warm and cold traffic, um, you learn it differently when it's your money you're spending. And especially when it's a brand new business, right? When you have a whole marketing department and a Fortune 500 company that's done this before and they know how to, do what they do, that's great. When it's you as an entrepreneur learning for the first time, even if you have some people helping you, if they've never marketed your type of product before in Facebook ads, and you know, you again, these are cold leads and you're not like prepared to spend that type of money for that type of lead, especially again, if you're a new business, your Facebook pixel actually has like zero data about like what works and what doesn't work for you. So it's definitely a part where I would definitely say like it was too early fiscally in my business to invest in that sort of thing. But I learned a lot of lessons, and I think it's actually helped make me a better product manager in terms of learning more about like the different types of traffic and like how dramatically different they really are when you experience it firsthand.
Yeah, so I'm so glad you brought that up. So I am not by any means a Facebook ads, Instagram ads expert. We don't talk about ads in the Brand and Business Academy in part because that is a whole genre of its
Yes,
own. Like it could be a whole PhD
it
around,
really could.
yeah, it really could around how you truly like niche down enough and use enough strategies to get the type of results you want. And there are some courses, I'm actually about to take one, some courses around like how to really master social media ads and ways to find people who you can help. And I think it's so important that you're talking about it in terms of, oh, so like this is something everybody online says do, right? Oh, run
Yes,
Instagram ads, run Facebook ads. But it's really hard to do. And taking bad advice can cost you money and
yes,
time. And it can waste your time. Like you can end up in the complete wrong genre with all the wrong people. So I thank you for being transparent about that because it's
yeah.
hard. It's really hard.
It's really hard. And one of the things you actually said in Brand and Business Academy that I it wasn't that I was like intentionally ignoring it, but a lesson I learned the hard way because I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so busy. I'm doing so much. And I really should have been like, I'm going to ignore all this other stuff and just focus here, even if it feels, and I put that in quotes, like a slower way to, grow the business, is I really would have focused on building my email list, right? I had like an initial kind of like seed on my email list. I had like maybe 100 people to start, but really a lot of the things where you said like, okay, like you should do videos or kind of do lead magnets and these sort of things, or just make sure that you are promoting it at all and building it that way, because the email list is where you make the money. And I was so inconsistent about sending out my email list because I was doing 100 other things. And I was just like, well, I'm doing these other things, so I'll get to this when I get to it. It's okay. I wasn't pushing people to my email list during that time either. So it wasn't even just I wasn't writing for it. Wasn't I wasn't actually adding anyone to it. And I think about now, like my email list could have had more people that are my perfect customer by now if I had just like focused on that piece of advice. And so for anyone listening, major key alert, like definitely Shontavia always says this. And so I feel very silly, but sometimes you just learn the hard, and I didn't mean to learn the hard way. I just was like, oh my gosh, I'm so busy. But I learned the hard way about the email listing. So, and Tanya Evans also has said this on Twitter, but when Shontavia tells you to do something, you better listen. She gives you advice, anything, just listen to her.
That is hilarious. I'm gonna have you call my husband next and tell
Okay.
him that
I'm
because I don't
I'm
know.
I'm available.
That's funny. That is hilarious. But no, I'm not saying I'm always right about everything, but I do think like when you're starting brand new, consistency is so important and consistency where you own something, right? Like not investing so much into somebody else's platform, into somebody else's money, into somebody else's stuff, but your own things. So
Yes.
like I don't know how much money you gave Facebook when you ran your ads, but imagine if you would have just like taken all that energy and money and put it into your own intellectual property, your email
Oh my
list, your
gosh.
brand, your all these other things. And I was gonna ask you like what has been the hardest part of this whole journey for you this year? And it sounds like maybe the ads were one of those things. And I'm wondering if there are any other things, like any other lessons learned, any other like really hard things that have existed for you as you started this year.
Yeah. Going back to what I mentioned in the beginning about balance and not imposing unrealistic expectations on yourself. So, unrealistic expectations in terms of timeline, like launching a business and then expecting, X amount of figures in X amount of months. That's great. And some people do that. It's not necessarily reasonable to be like, I'm going to have a 5-figure business in a matter of 3 months, and that's something where I'm like, oh, I could really do this because I saw people online who purported to be doing that, but they don't have the same product as me. I don't even know if they're telling the truth, right? And they also might be burnt out. I don't know what their relationship with their significant other or spouse is. I don't know, what, inner turmoil they're going through. And just like kind of putting unreasonable expectations on myself or on yourself, but the unreasonable expectations I put on myself definitely kind of pushed me to the brink of burnout, which like I never want to do that much all at once again. And it's like kind of Beyonce's Homecoming, where she says, like, I really pushed myself to my limit. And, I'm grateful for this experience, but I never want to work this hard again. And that's how I feel. I'm like, I'm like super grateful for all the lessons I learned in my business this year. I feel like I probably got like 2 to 3 years worth of lessons in a 9-month period of time. But, I'm grateful for those lessons. I never want to have to learn at that speed ever again.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I remember looking at like all these things you were doing and thinking, wow, she's either like gonna spontaneously combust or like need to go to Hawaii for a month after all
I
this is
still would love
over.
to go to Hawaii for a month. That's actually going once like the vaccine's out. I'm gonna try to work from an island for a month because yeah, I deserve.
You do. You deserve. And who is it? Is it Bermuda? I think who's like recruiting Americans to come live in
Yeah,
Bermuda for a year and
yeah,
just
and
work from
it's
the island.
their application is only I think it's like under $300 because Barbados I looked into theirs and theirs is like nearly 300 no, $3,000. And I was like, that's okay, Barbados. Like I'll see you some other time.
That's right. That's funny. That's funny. But I love that you talk about giving yourself grace. Like that's something I think I wrote to my email list a few weeks ago because it can be really tough to be
Yes.
out here and like you said, you look at everybody else and you see what they're doing. And who is it? Is it Iyanla Vanzant who says comparison is the thief of joy? Or somebody
Yes.
says that comparison is the thief of joy. And it is,
Yes.
especially when you're starting your business and building and growing and your numbers don't look the way you think they should and all those things. But
Yeah.
I'm glad you kept pushing because you're doing some dope things. Like
Thank you.
it was all worth it, even though,
It
like
was
you said,
it
you don't
was
want to
all
do
worth
it that
it.
way.
Yeah, like I definitely feel like my fall was like a major dip because I'll say like just honestly like I was very disappointed with the outcome of like the ad situation, and I'll say there was like a brief millisecond where I was like, you could just shut it all down now, and I was like, but if I don't quit now, I'll actually probably gain enough people who are interested in what I'm doing that this will be a viable business, but it just won't be in the timeline that early pandemic Ann assumed that timeline would look like. And I think that's the thing is people quit when the timeline doesn't look like the timeline they imagined. And I realized that I'm like the Airbnb people, which their product costs a lot more money to build than my product. And they went for years and years, failure after failure. Like at the beginning of their product, they had people paying in cash when you showed up to the Airbnb, like no credit card, like no deposit. stranger just showed up and they paid you in cash. And I was like, if Airbnb can make cereal boxes during, a presidential election to try to keep their business afloat, after years of failing, I think I can make it over a year into business for a course about, skills that I'm very good at that help people actually get a job that will value them and appreciate them. So yeah, I'm just grateful
Girl,
for it all.
that is a sermon. That is a message right there. That is a message. And you started a business in a pandemic.
In a pandemic.
This is like
In a
no
pandemic.
small feat.
And my first launch, I was actually running my first launch. I was like, it was launched, but I was running the first set of the course while I was also simultaneously teaching a class about AI at Columbia. And I look back and I'm like, why did I decide that was okay? Why couldn't I have pushed that back? But I learned things, and I'm much more knowledgeable now than I was back when I was working a full-time job and teaching a course on AI and teaching people how to track their dream job.
You learn things. That needs to be on a t-shirt. You learn things. You learn things. I love that. And I really, really love that. And I know we've been working together for just a short amount of time, but I've been so impressed to just see how things have grown for you and how like people are getting increasingly more interested in attracting any job, let alone their dream job. So I know that like
Yeah.
what you are doing is going to pop sometime soon. Who knows what soon means, to your point about like
Yeah.
whatever your timeline looks like. But you're doing dope stuff. You really, really are. And
Thank you.
as you are like looking to 2021 and 2025 and 2035 and whatever else, what does the future of your business look like? I mean, you started in the middle of a pandemic. At some
Yes.
point, we'll, Lord willing, be out of all of this. What does the future look like for Pivot Grow Hustle, for the Attract Your Dream Job course, and everything else?
Yeah. So for Pivot Grow Hustle and Attract Your Dream Job, I see Attract Your Dream Job, being like the flagship course. I know I want to expand it. Right now, it's at the place where it's only live. And I actually have a lot of people who are interested that are not, I'm in the Eastern time zone, US, who are outside of the US who are interested in taking it, but the time zone is a little bit of a challenge for them. Or the other thing is, right now I'm running this where I start the course on a specific date, and you can still watch the recordings of the class, but generally you're doing this when I start the cohort. So I want to make it so that I can record this and you can take it from anywhere in the world at any time, whenever you feel like you want to gain these skills, gain this knowledge. And I also want to expand it. And the thing about recording this is it's going to actually allow me to add a lot more bonus content that's going to help people, because when you're doing it live, like your attention span is only so long, right? And so there is actually a lot of stuff that I actually have, in my notebook that I want to add to this course that's really going to help people even more. I'm undecided right now in terms of, what other pieces look like in terms of, do I want to offer other courses that are complementary, especially for people who are maybe like, I feel like I'm doing a lot and I don't actually know what direction I want to go in. We talk a little bit about direction in this course, but one of the things that I hear a lot from people who aren't an exact fit for my course is, I want to change my career, but I don't know exactly what I want to do yet, which is not, those people are not like a perfect fit for my course, because you kind of have to know where you're going to be able to attract that dream job. So I'm thinking about like, how do I create a course that helps people better explore what their interests are professionally, and like, how do you do that while you're still collecting a paycheck, or what can you do if you have to get another job that maybe isn't your dream job, in the process of still discovering what the heck are you trying to do professionally, right? Or like, what, even imagine what a dream job is. And so I really see the course itself, Attract Your Dream Job, expanding, and maybe some like smaller courses, but I actually see myself offering other things. And I'm debating like if it's part of Griffin Product and Growth, or if it's going to be part of Pivot Grow Hustle. but I also get asked a lot about people who are interested in going into product, and there's 1,000,001 product courses, but I'm really interested in kind of creating one that will also help like women of color or just women in general who are interested in product, hearing from another woman, and so that's another thing that I'm considering. I'm not sure which of the businesses that will fit in with yet.
Sweet. No, that's a wonderful plan, and I cannot wait to see all of it happen.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm actually like truly excited because it feels very empowering to know that whatever happens like with like any day job I have, I like don't have to be that person where it's like, oh, I have to use my savings to bridge the gap between job A and job B, or have to like rush into a job that isn't a fit for me. And so for me, as someone where I actually very much love being a product manager, like if I don't, create my own startup, which I mean, we'll see, you know, it's really great to know that I have something that I own that I can continue to help people with, and be able to have that also make me more independent and make me not have to worry about, okay, if my job stops tomorrow, like where is my next paycheck coming from?
Oh, amen. Income and impact.
Yes.
That's dope. That's dope. Awesome. So, Anne, where can people find you? There's so much I want to say. I know we're like way over
I
time,
know.
but where can people find you? And if they want to
Yes.
take the course, if they want to reach out to you, if they want to hire you to speak about product management, how can people get in touch with you?
Yes. So if you are interested in a track your dream job, please go to pivotgrowhustle.com. That is pivotgrowhustle.com. If you're interested more in my product management experience or emerging technology, you can find me at anntgriffin.com. And that's ANNETGRIFFIN.com. I had to think about it for a second. I was like, wait. So there's like, because I sometimes say it another where it's like GRI the double FIN, and I started saying that in my head, and we won't go there. I already have you over, but those are the places that you can find me.
Excellent. And what about on social? Where can people
On
find us on
social?
social media?
Yes. So on Twitter, you can find Pivot Grow Hustle at Pivot Grow Hustle. You can find me also at Ann T. Griffin on Twitter. On Instagram, you can also find Pivot Grow Hustle just as is. And I'm ATGRIF on Instagram for my personal stuff. So those are all the places. And I think those are the major places I'm in. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm at /Ann T. Griffin.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Anne. This was wonderful. I'm so excited we got a chance to talk today.
Yes, same here. Thank you for having me, Shontavia.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Shontavia Show. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment wherever you're listening. You can find me on social media everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and wherever else at Shontavia JESQ. You can also visit me at shontavia.com to find a transcript of this episode, along with other show notes. While you're there, please be sure to subscribe to my email newsletter. The information shared in this podcast and through my other platforms is designed to educate you about business and entrepreneurship, and I love to do this work. While I am a lawyer, though, the information I provide is not legal advice and does not create or constitute an attorney-client relationship. The Shontavia Show is a Leverage original. The show is recorded on site in South Carolina and produced at Sit and Spin Studio in Greenville, South Carolina. Original music and sound design is by Matt Morgan and Daniel Gregory.